can I just say that the three of us, I went there as moderator of the Church's Commission on International Affairs, Reverend Mosnta as General Secretary of the Evangelical Alliance of South Africa, and Reverend Molo as a representative of the Council of Churches. I thought it's important to say that our briefing is about our experiences and our observations and the conclusions we made as a delegation. Whatever we say still has to be presented to the relevant bodies, which will make their own decisions. So please don't say the World Council of Churches said the following, or TISA said the following, or the SACC said the following. I think it's important to do that so that you know this is our report. And in my case, as Frank Chikane, former Vice President of the SACC, former General Secretary, and an emeritus pastor of the Apostolic Faith Mission of South Africa. That's where it goes for now, until I get to the WCC, and then it becomes a WCC matter. So I just thought it's important to make that clear, because I don't want somebody to say, no, this matter was not considered in our courts. That's the first thing I want to say. The second thing is that for us, we have read the reports. You have reports about Israel-Palestine. The first report is the Amnesty International report, which says Israel's apartheid against Palestinians, and they make a very clear legal argument why it is apartheid and a crime against humanity. And they made it very clear. It's not ambiguous, it's scientific. And then you've got Bethlehem. I always pronounce it wrongly. It's Bethlehem. This is a Jewish human rights group which has expressed it from that perspective, and it says the regime of Jewish supremacy from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea. This is apartheid. That's what it says. And the third one, which I didn't know it's as thick as this, but I read a summary. This is from the Human Rights Watch. You remember they went on the media and they said a threshold crossed Israeli authorities and the crime of apartheid and persecution, which means they've crossed the line, basically. And for us as South Africans, I would like to say, whilst Bethlehem is saying this is apartheid, we would like to say our experience of the last week is that this is more than apartheid. Actually, it's critical to make that clear. And we met both sides. Just for record, I made sure we request meetings both from the Palestinian Authority, that's the state, Palestinian state, and the Israeli state. We communicated, the SACC helped us to communicate with their embassies here to ask for meetings, because we wanted to meet both sides. We also wanted to meet human rights groups on both sides. We also met communities, and this is where, for me, it's critical about communities. We went to communities that are threatened. The first one is Silwan community in Jerusalem, and I will speak to that, but you will see the map the community gave us of the threats against them and the red spots are where their houses have already been taken and occupied. And the blue spots are houses that the Israeli settlers have determined to take from them. And then there is the community of Sheikh Jarrah. You'll assist me in pronouncing it correctly. And this particular community, it's critical because they lost their houses in 1948. They still have keys for their houses. Some came from Haifa, some West Jerusalem and other parts of the country. When I visited Israel in Palestine, Israel in 2015, I was taken by the principal of the Bethlehem Bible College to his home, that side of the wall. He's one of the Arab Israelis who kept his home the other side. And then he took me to houses of the others who have been removed. They have the keys, the houses are there, and they've been occupied since 1948. So they moved to East Jerusalem. That was Jordanian territory at that point before 67. The war happens in 1967. Israel occupies East Jerusalem. So they are now under the Israeli authority. And then they come to them and say, no, the Jordanians gave them land and built some houses. The UN assisted them as refugees. Now you are inside where you ran away from. And then they are told, in terms of the law passed by Knesset in 1972, that the Jewish Israelis have the right to claim land which they believe belong to their forefathers or whatever the case may be. In some cases, it's this Israeli Settler Association that makes the claims. And in some of the claims, you can associate the settler with the land, particularly. It's a general rule. And so they come to claim that land in Sheikh Jarrah. We went to meet the community there, we talked to them, they briefed us. And they say they've lost the case because when you go to court, like in an apartheid system, the apartheid laws are used against you. In this particular case, they've got a law that says you can claim it, but they can't claim their houses in Haifa and West Jerusalem because the law only applies to Jewish Israelis, not to Palestinians or Arab Palestinians. And because of that, you can see the design of apartheid. Then there is the ethnic cleansing in this area so that they turn it into a Jewish environment. And the same with the Sheikh Jarrah. We just picked up two because we couldn't get to all the other communities. When you move around, which we met with the organizations that deal with prisoners, and they are using administrative detention, which is our preventative detention. You remember they declared a state of emergency, locked up a lot of our comrades in Motabi without trial. Now, in your case, we can go to court and go and contest that. But in their case, it's the military courts. So we used to go to an apartheid civilian court, and you could get lawyers there. In this one, it's a military court. So it's the soldiers who arrest you, who put you, it's almost like a captured soldier in a sense, or it's not citizens. And so they make judgment. And when you appear there in court, the lawyer who explained this, who deals with these cases, was quite extraordinary. When you appear at the court, they say, no, we have secret information that you are a threat to the state, but we can't reveal the secret information. So the lawyer can't also get the information because it's secret. So they pass judgment that you continue staying in jail. There's somebody there, I don't have the name now, who has been under the administrative detention for 12 years, has not been tried or anything like that. And that's why I say it's more than apartheid, because at least we went to a civilian court, even if it was apartheid laws. In this case, you end up with a soldier. That's the person who determines what you do. In terms of movements, the Palestinians are restricted from A to E. I've now learned it. You say they are classified. You either belong to A area, B area, C area, D area, and E area. Each one of them determines what rights you have. And I'm told that if you are A, you are the worst. So for you to move within Palestine, you need to cross control points, checkpoints, and you must have a permit to move from one area to another. Now, we had Bantustans here, but hey man, we used to move around and get to the Bantustan from one to the other. They didn't even ask for a permit. You did get a sign that says you are entering Uputatswana, but there was no checkpoint there, and there was no soldier who would check. And so for us to move from Bethlehem to Ramallah, you go through a number of checkpoints and they check you. And the person who drives you with a Palestinian must have the right ID to move around. So in one instant, we took 1.5 hours intense state of 30 minutes because this man was avoiding the checkpoints that will not allow him to go in. We met with the patriarch, the Greek Orthodox Church patriarch. You'll see it in the statement. He is the most senior church leader. There was an authority given to Jordan to protect the holy sites. And when Israel took over, they passed a law to protect those holy sites. And it's Jewish, it's Islam, it's Christian in that Jerusalem precinct. And lately, you've got extremist Jewish groups that go there to violate all the guarantees. And we get it from the patriarch himself. And there are statements from the WCC, you can Google them and read them. But the rights that were protected about the holy sites in East Jerusalem are being violated daily. The properties are being taken. And we went to the old city there and they showed us a facility of the churches which has been taken by extremist settlers, and the churches can't go in and use that facility. And we're talking to you about an experience of one week or going to all those places. I just want to say we met also the Israeli group of very informed people. Interestingly, it's 2 former Israeli ambassadors in South Africa. They are very interesting. They came out of South Africa when back changed, which means you can't be in South Africa and for 4 years and go back and pretend like there's nothing wrong there. And they gave us a thorough briefing from a Jewish perspective, numbers, statistics, and the message is clear, and you can Google them. We'll give you the names of those 2 former ambassadors. They are saying that the occupation of Palestine is a threat to the future of the Jews, and that it is not representing them as Jews, the treatment of Palestinians, both inside Israel and outside. Even those who are inside, who are supposed to be citizens, their citizenship is defined differently from the Jewish citizen. And when you apply for a permit to build, they just don't give you the permit. If you are an Arab Israeli, it takes ages. And when you are a Jew, you apply, you get the permit. And if you build without a permit, they demolish it. They demolish the house. But in Silwan, where there's an illegally built Jewish structure they are using, it stands, even if you go to court and say this structure is illegal, but they will demolish the Palestinian one next to it and say it is illegal. You can't explain apartheid better than that. You know. Lastly, I would like to say, unfortunately, we have not had a response from the Israeli embassy about asking for meetings. I've said this morning that if they gave us the meeting, we will go back and go and talk to them. We're waiting. So it's not the end. The fact that we have come back without the meetings doesn't mean it's the end, because you can't talk to one side and find peace. But on the Palestinian side, they gave us a hearing. We met the mayor of Ramallah. We then met the chief of justice, which is your chief justice here. We met the foreign minister. Ultimately, we met the prime minister. As you know, the president is not well, so we thought we would pay him a courtesy visit and go and say prayers there. But the prime minister was the person ultimately. And when you listen to them, the two-state solution was agreed upon about 25 years ago. It's a long time ago. Since then, more land has been taken out of Palestine by Israeli settlers, and the more you listen to them, the more you realize that Israel by default is actually destroying the two-state solution. And the only solution is going to be a one-state solution, because it's either you colonize people and be a state with colonial subjects, or you become an open society and everybody participates in the politics and elections and etc. And I think in their enthusiasm, especially the extremist Jewish groups and Zionist groups who want to clean the place and make it Israel without Palestinians, it's going to create a situation where they become colonizers of the place and permanent occupation of people who have no rights. And when a prime minister says to you, because I was saying, but if they are threatening people with eviction, what do you do as a Palestinian state? He says, I need permit from Israel to move from one point to another. I can't just go there as prime minister. I need permission to go there. And that tells you that even the Palestinian Authority does not have authority to actually exercise the rights. Okay, can I just say one thing, and my colleagues will speak to this, because it's quite an experience for me. If a Jewish Israeli commits a crime in Palestine, the Palestinian police can arrest that person. They must take that person, hand that person over to Israel. But if a Palestinian gets arrested in Israel, they charge you and prosecute you there. But it's not only that. In terms of international law, you can't detain people from the occupied area and go and try them in your country and keep them in your prisons. But most of those prisoners are there on the other side. And so you can get it from the Amnesty International details there if you want to test them. I just want to conclude by saying there's no way in which that system will be sustainable, to use the Jewish friends' language. And that peace cannot be attained with 55 years old occupation that still continues. No rights. You meet 55-year-old people who say, I was born colonized, I'm still colonized. I was born occupied, I'm still occupied, I have no rights. The world can't allow this to happen. And we have concluded, the three of us, the world is hypocritical. I'm dealing with Ukraine now as a moderator of the Churches Commission, and clearly Ukraine is a victim of the superpowers. I've learned something new, that there are those who are nuclear powers and those who are covered by nuclear powers. I discovered I'm not covered. And so all the people who are covered or own nuclear weapons produce arms, but the arms are never used on their territory. It's used amongst those of us who are not covered. And Ukraine is this theater. But the difference with Ukraine and Israel, Palestine, is that if it happens to Ukraine and it's Europe, all the sanctions will descend, everything. The world will turn against them. But if Israel does it, nothing happens. And that's clear hypocrisy, it's racism. So I've concluded the world's politics are run on racist basis. I thank you.